morning, everyone. My name is Conor McNamara, Managing Director of ASEAN at Amazon Web Services, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2022 AWS ASEAN Summit. First of all, I would like to say a big thank you to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to spend time with us today. I first want to talk a little bit about the event and why we're so excited about it this year. First of all, we're excited about the size. This is the biggest IT event in ASEAN. We expect to see over 40,000 unique registrations and over 14,000 unique attendees. Second, we're excited about the program we have in store for you this year. We have more than 100 content sessions across 11 tracks and over 15 different industry verticals represented. We are really privileged to have 50 customer-led breakout sessions with representation from organizations such as Techcombank in Vietnam and DBS here in Singapore. Finally, at Amazon, we love to experiment, and our events are no different. So this year, we again have a number of firsts, including our first AWS Cloud Skills track, first Public Sector track, first Emerging Tech track, and our first localized language tracks in Vietnamese and Thai. I can't go any further without thanking our sponsors, without whose support this event simply would not be possible. The fact that we've been able to enhance this event again this year is largely thanks to our sponsors. So a special thank you to our global sponsors, Intel, VMware, Datadog, Veeam, New Relic, and Palo Alto Networks. Next, I'd like to say a big thank you to our gold sponsors. We really value your support and partnership, not just today, but throughout the year. We also want to thank Intel for sponsoring our AWS Deep Racer League. Now, as much as we've enjoyed the virtual world for the last couple of years, we're really excited to move from a fully virtual summit to a hybrid summit in 2022 with our in-person Exec Leaders Forum. A huge thank you to Accenture for your sponsorship in making this a hybrid summit event possible. In last year's summit, I talked about how AWS had partnered with organizations across ASEAN to pivot their business models, increase business resiliency, and manage their costs in real time. While all of these remain relevant as we emerge from the pandemic, there are 4 additional themes that I've observed over the last 12 months that I thought would be worth sharing with you today. The first theme is the increasing number of customers using AWS to run mission-critical workloads. Whether it be Caring Pharmacy running SAP, VP Bank running Finacle for digital banking services, or Globe Telecom running Amdocs for their customer interactions management, organizations across ASEAN are leveraging AWS for their most mission-critical workloads. This is largely because we're committed to building globally consistent, fault-tolerant infrastructure with 84 availability zones globally. AWS has 7 times less downtime than any other global cloud provider. This is why AWS is acknowledged by Gartner as a leader in cloud infrastructure and platform services for the 11th consecutive year. The second is how our customers have leveraged the cloud to harness the power of their data and build a future-proof data architecture. At AWS, we are committed to providing a holistic, end-to-end set of data services to modernize, unify, analyze, and provide predictive insights on your data. In addition to our comprehensive set of native data services, we also work with specialized ISVs like Snowflake and Databricks to provide customers with the opportunity to select an end-to-end solution that supports their specific business objectives. A great example here is the Indonesian health tech startup Halodoc. By using AWS for data, Halodoc is able to create data pipelines in just 2 hours instead of 2 weeks, and only requires 4 data engineers to build and manage the unified analytics and AI platform. You can hear more from them and their journey with AWS in the Transform Your Business with Data track. Thirdly, we've seen an increasing trend of customers leveraging the AWS cloud to meet their sustainability objectives. This is not surprising, given a recent APAC report by 451 Research found that cloud computing is 5 times more energy efficient than running workloads on premises. Amazon is a founding member of the Climate Pledge, with a commitment to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2040. And of course, we're also committed to ensuring that our customers can benefit from our sustainability investments. To provide customers with real-time visibility of the carbon footprint of their AWS services, we recently launched the AWS Carbon Footprint Tool, helping customers to track, measure, and review the carbon emissions from AWS usage to meet sustainability goals. Please do reach out to your account manager if you'd like to explore ways on how AWS can assist you in achieving your sustainability goals. A growing reason why customers choose AWS is because AWS is the broadest and deepest network of global and local independent software vendors, or ISVs, building on AWS, allowing you to select best-of-breed solutions for your specific needs, whether that be cloud-native AWS solutions or third-party offerings. In the last 12 months, we've made significant headway in our charter to invest and bring the best ISVs to support our customers' needs, from local ISVs like the recent listing of Amity on the AWS Marketplace to global ISVs like SAP. I now want to talk a little bit about the health of the AWS business. Over the last 12 months, we've seen a noticeable acceleration in our business. We are now a $70 billion run rate business, growing at 40% year on year. There are a number of things that come to mind when we consider the acceleration we've seen in the business over the last 12 months. First of all, the value proposition of cloud has crystallized for many organizations over the last 24 months, as we have navigated our way through this pandemic together. Our founder and now CEO of Amazon, Andy Jassy, has said that the cloud is the biggest technology shift in our lifetime, and this is now coming to fruition. Another thing we like to say at AWS is there is no compression algorithm for experience, which makes our 6-year head start over our nearest competitor a significant factor for customers. We've been doing this for over 16 years, since we pioneered the industry with the launch of our first service, AWS S3, back in 2006. Finally, we believe our culture is a sustainable differentiator and something customers really value when they are selecting a long-term cloud provider. First of all, we are customer obsessed. 90% of what we build is based directly on your feedback, with the remaining 10% on what we invent on your behalf. We're also unusually long-term orientated and focused on building a business that outlasts all of us. What that means is putting the customer at the center of every decision. For example, we remain committed to reducing prices. We've reduced prices 111 times since we started the business back in 2006. Now let me talk a little bit about our ASEAN customers. ASEAN has always been a region of technology innovators, so it's no surprise that as soon as we launched AWS in 2006, that ASEAN customers recognized and embraced the transformative power of the AWS cloud. At AWS, we remain very proud of our strong startup heritage, and we are uniquely positioned to help our startup customers bring their ideas to life and succeed at every stage of their life cycle. We are delighted to see startups such as BitCub, Thailand's largest and fastest growing blockchain and cryptocurrency startup, build and exponentially scale their business on AWS while staying compliant. The second key point we are observing is that ASEAN enterprises are modernizing their legacy core applications to scale their business in creative ways. For example, KFC Philippines uses AWS data and machine learning services to plan, predict, and reduce inventory, which has collectively reduced cost by 25%. ASEAN enterprises are also leveraging AWS data services to modernize their data and analytics using serverless. A great example here is Techcombank in Vietnam, and you can hear more from them as part of the Transform Your Business with Data breakout track. Last year, I spoke about ASEAN ISVs driving the global SaaS revolution with over 1.6 million developers in the region, and over the last 12 months, this trend has accelerated, with more ASEAN ISVs adopting AWS native services to reduce costs and deploy at speed and scale. For example, IOTA, an intelligent marketing platform, uses Amazon SageMaker to reduce their ML model training time by 50%. And Embed, a cashless business management solution, used Amazon Redshift to consolidate data from over 3,000 databases into a single cluster, achieving 10 times savings on infrastructure spend and reducing their operating costs by 75%. Next, let me talk a little bit about SMBs. SMBs form the backbone of the ASEAN economy, employing more than 80% of the ASEAN workforce and contributing to over half of the region's GDP. In ASEAN, SMBs across virtually every industry and of every size are increasingly leveraging AWS to build new business models, launch innovative products and services, and create new sales and customer engagement models. A good example is Altia Care, an Indonesian healthcare app launched on AWS to serve patients remotely, scaled to 100,000 users in 3 months. Finally, public sector is a really important and thriving business for us here in ASEAN, and we are really excited about the impact we have on improving citizens' lives. In particular, I love the work we've done throughout the pandemic. For example, working with the provincial government of Bali to launch a remote working mobile application for 11,000 employees across 247 offices and schools, and with the Ministry of Higher Education in Malaysia to migrate their online learning management system for over 110,000 students to the AWS cloud. You will hear more about these examples and many more in our dedicated public sector track this year. The next topic I want to talk about is our commitment to ASEAN. There are 5 categories where we are investing locally, and I'd like to talk a bit more about those now. Firstly, we are focused on investing in local infrastructure. As I mentioned, we launched our first AWS region in Singapore in 2010 and followed this with edge locations in the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, and most recently Indonesia. We also expanded Outposts availability to 6 ASEAN countries, allowing our customers to run AWS infrastructure and services on premises for a truly consistent hybrid experience. In addition, we've recently announced our plans to launch 3 local zones in the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. These are designed to run workloads that require single-digit millisecond latency, like video rendering and graphics-intensive virtual desktop applications. Overall, super exciting. December 2021 was a milestone moment for our business here in ASEAN, with the launch of our second AWS region in Jakarta. During our launch event, we also committed to investing over $5 billion in Indonesia over the next 15 years. Another exciting part of this announcement was our momentum and ongoing commitment to upskilling builders across Indonesia. To date, we have trained over 200,000 Indonesians and have committed to train hundreds of thousands more between now and 2025. Secondly, we are keenly aware of the need to localize our services to best serve the needs of ASEAN customers. One great example here is the recent launch of Amazon Connect in Thailand, with local numbers that allows businesses to deliver a better customer experience while achieving up to 80% reduction on outbound telephone rates. We have also included local languages support for AWS AI services such as Translate and Transcribe. And we're excited that Amazon Transcribe now supports 37 languages, including Thai, Bahasa Melayu, and Bahasa Indonesia. The thing I hear time and time again from customers is how the size and caliber of our local team is a key part of the AWS value proposition. That's why we're investing in multidimensional teams, including solution architects, support, training and certification, security, and compliance specialists, and of course, AWS professional services resources in each of our ASEAN countries. We want to be with you on every step of your transformation journey, and our local teams are a big part of that commitment. At AWS, we also see partners as an extension of our own team, and we are committed to developing a vibrant and diverse partner community here in ASEAN. There are a couple of trends I would like to call out. Firstly, we have seen an acceleration in the breadth and depth of our partner community, with the influx of a number of global partners looking to capture the opportunity that exists in this region, including Mind, Rackspace, Mynt, all expanding in ASEAN in response to the trend that they're seeing. Secondly, we have seen an increase in our overall ASEAN partner capabilities, driven by a 58% year-on-year increase in partner certifications, with a number of exciting milestones, including eCloud Valley achieving our first machine learning competency, and Harangi achieving our first AWS security competency in ASEAN. Lastly, we're excited about the growing number of differentiated services our partners are offering to both regional and global customers. Amity, a Thai-based plug-and-play social platform, and Affle, a cloud-based consumer intelligence platform built on AWS, are 2 great examples here. Lastly, I want to talk about an area I'm personally really passionate about: skills. For the builders of today, we offer programs such as the AWS Skills Guild, which is a comprehensive workforce transformation program that aims to drive cloud fluency across your organization, from the boardroom to the developer. We are also committed to enabling the builders of tomorrow through our AWS Academy program, where we have partnered with a number of universities across ASEAN, including RMIT University in Vietnam. In Indonesia, we've also launched the Laptops for Builders program, a free program that provides laptops to 200 schools across 30 cities in Indonesia. I trust overall this gives you a perspective into how strategic ASEAN is as a geography for AWS. It's also worth noting that we are still at a relatively early stages in the investment curve for ASEAN, and we have plans to continue to invest across all of these dimensions in the months and years to come. Finally, I want to thank you again for investing your time with us. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to your feedback. I hope you have a great day and enjoy the event. Now I'd like to hand you over to Shantanu Dutt, our ASEAN Head of Technology, for our keynote.
Good morning, ASEAN. Welcome to yet another edition of ASEAN Summit Online. We are coming to you live from a studio in Singapore. Yes, this is actually a live keynote, not pre-recorded. It's just past 10:15 a.m. here. My name is Shantanu Dutt. I'm the head of technology for Southeast Asia with AWS, based in Singapore. My Twitter handle is up on the screen there, so if you want to connect with me, comment on something, like something from my session, I'm happy to connect with you on my Twitter handle. I've been on board the company for a little over 11 years now, and one of the most exciting parts of my career here is really meeting and interacting with customers and working backwards from the innovations that they've been doing every day, literally inventing and reinventing themselves every single day. 11 years ago when I joined, I used to go around to businesses and people explaining to them what this concept of cloud computing is. What is this thing of pay-per-use, pay-as-you-go model, and why it's going to be the future? Fast forward today, I have to very rarely do that. In fact, it's the other way around. The ecosystem of customers and partners has become so pervasive that you find use cases of every kind from all different businesses every single day. For example, yesterday evening, I was actually at a supermarket shopping for groceries. And I picked up a sachet, a pack of Baba's Masala, which is a Malaysia company, really popular for over 40 years for actually producing powder for spices and curry mixes, really colorful. And turns out they are our customers as well. So a traditional business like Baba's into the business of creating curry mixes and powder for spices is also using technology on the cloud. Now, Connor McNamara, our ASEAN MD, spoke a bit about our customers and our ecosystem. What you see on your screen is a very, very tiny snapshot among the thousands and thousands of customers that we have across ASEAN using AWS. Which brings us to the question as to why are customers continuing to choose AWS today? Now, is it because of reliability? Is it scalability? Is it security? Is it the global footprint based on which they can scale globally or beyond? While all those reasons are valid reasons as to why they choose AWS, the biggest reason by default that most customers tell us they choose AWS is the pace of innovation. Now, if you look at this basic scenario, Company 1 and Company 2, Company 1 has decided to stay on-prem in their data centers or colo facilities and keep a majority of their workloads there, versus Company 2 that has decided to move a majority of their workloads to the AWS cloud. It is very clear that for the next 3, 4, 5+ years, Company 1 is going to be very, very limited, if anything, on innovation. Because the infrastructure on-prem and everything on top of it will remain pretty static. It's very likely that's going to happen. And if you look at Company 2, they're going to benefit from the extreme pace of innovation of releasing of services, features, and offerings from AWS almost every single day. And the beauty of that is that AWS, we work backwards from customers to take their asks of offering services and features as to what they want, and then work backwards from that to actually iterate every day to make those offerings and services and features released to the market. 90 to 95% of all our releases are based on customer asks. And the remaining 5 to 10% of them are also based on customer asks. It's just that sometimes customers don't articulate themselves well enough. And so we actually read between the lines to make those releases happen. And to take just one example out of that is our instance types, our basic compute offering in the form of EC2. When I joined the company 11 years ago, we had maybe 12, I think 14 different instance types available. Fast forward today, there are 500 plus instance types available publicly for launching, from compute optimized instances to storage optimized, to network optimized, to memory optimized, to customers that want to run deep learning models or HPC type of applications. Every type of application across the breadth and suite of services breadth and suite of applications that customers want to run are available for launch today. And this has been taken into account based on customer feedback. The other aspect is power consumption, alignment to sustainability factors. A study by 451 Research in the US found out that among all the US enterprise data centers that were surveyed, AWS happened to be 3.5x more efficient than those data centers that were running in those surveyed companies. A separate study by 451 Research in Europe found out that AWS was actually 5x more efficient than compute resources running in an average EU company. And so what we find with customers is just by moving to the AWS cloud, they can reduce their energy consumption by up to 80%. They can even go further beyond that if they tweak their applications to make them more optimized, to consume lesser CPU cycles. But just by moving to AWS cloud, they can save up to 80% energy consumption because of the efficiencies that we add. And so it's extremely important for you as a business to make the decision of the future platform on cloud based on what you want to do and invent yourself in the future. If you look at businesses today, there are business processes, technology processes, people processes. And I can bet you that most of those, the way those processes exist, are probably as a result of some legacy decisions and legacy reasons that happened several years ago that influenced those processes. And it reminds me of a story of the space shuttle. If you look at the space shuttle, this picture, and if you look at the two things on the side, they are called the solid rocket boosters. Now, those exist to give extreme thrust to the space shuttle to launch into space. And the scientists and engineers working on the space shuttle actually decided to increase the breadth of those solid rocket boosters to increase the thrust on the space shuttle. Turns out they ran into a unique problem which was nowhere related to the design of the space shuttle. Because after you actually make these design decisions, the space shuttle and the solid rocket boosters have to be transported on railroad across to the launch site, which are on the coastal, on a coastal launch site from the production facilities. And when they're transferred through railroad, in the US, the maximum dimensions, the maximum diameter of freight on railroads can be 156 inches wide in diameter. The tunnels through which the trains pass are designed based on those dimensions. And the distance between two railway tracks on a standard rail track is 4 feet, 8.5 inches. Now you might be wondering, why is it 4 feet, 8.5 inches? Turns out the United States acquired the standard from the railroads built in England many, many years ago before the US. And in England, the people who used tools and people and processes and whatever that they used to build those railroads acquired the standard from the people who actually built trams. And the people who built trams acquired that standard from road wagons, right? Wagons that ran on the road, which had the fear of breakdown on those long, old roads. And so they ended up following the ruts or the lines that were formed, the marks that were formed on the road, to make their distance between the two wheels on those wagons exactly to match with them. But turns out that originally came into place from Imperial Rome, where war chariots were used, and the distance between the two wheels was 4 feet, 8.5 inches, because that was the exact distance where two war horses could fit in. So as you can see, as strange and extreme as it sounds, but a significant design decision in the space shuttle was influenced by the width of two war chariots, or two war horses, more than 2,000 plus years ago. And if you look at companies today, you think about your applications that probably could be monoliths, or your databases that could be traditional RDMS databases. These were designed and those decisions made to design them back in the 80s and 90s. And they were not meant to actually operate at scale and address the innovative use cases that you have today and in the future. And it's really important that you don't let your past define the future. We spoke about instance types and how the increasing variety of instance types have reached a scale of 500 plus different instance types today. And if you look at our EC2 offering, we had to fundamentally rethink a lot of things around it rather than looking at the past in terms of how virtualization was done. It's become so popular today at a scale where on an average in 2021, there were 60 million EC2 instances that were launched on an average every single day. Now get this right, 60 million EC2 instances every day on an average. If you think about it, the population of Malaysia is just over 32 million. And so this stat on your screen basically means that every permanent resident of Malaysia, every human staying there, is launching nearly 2 EC2 instances every single day for 365 days a year. And underneath this infrastructure, there's a lot of innovation that goes in. As I said, we had to fundamentally rethink the way we would do this. Virtualization, when it was invented, the hypervisor was meant to support one machine, not multi-tenancy, not on a public cloud. And after using the traditional virtualization techniques for a few years, we realized we had to look forward and reinvent and do things completely differently. With the AWS Nitro, chipset, that's exactly what we did. We offloaded the API calls to spawn up CPU resources or network resources or memory and storage resources or add security and governance. All these API calls from virtual machines add inefficiencies to the hypervisor. And what the Nitro chipset did was offloaded these API calls from the hypervisor to actually hardware and software that's dedicated to Nitro, which actually increased the efficiencies of the hypervisor, and those efficiencies saved were given back to customers. We look at chipsets, where there's also a lot of innovation going on. Intel continues to be one of our earliest and biggest chipset provider and one of the most common chipset providers across our EC2 instances. We've obviously added AMD chipsets, right, to actually add flexibility and variety to that chipset. And in addition, of late, we've actually started actually building custom silica. And if you look at Graviton, while there's Terranium and Inferentia for customers that actually want to build deep learning models, you can actually look at Graviton 2, which is our ARM-based processors. And once Graviton 2 was released in the later half of 2020, it really got customers excited. Because throughout 2021, tens and thousands of customers across the world and in ASEAN started uptaking Graviton 2-based instances to move their workloads. The reason for that is Graviton 2-based instances give you up to 40% price to performance uptick and optimization compared to a similar generation EC2 instances. Encouraged by the success of customers adopting it, we actually worked backwards from customers and took this even ahead by releasing Graviton 3, which we announced at re:Invent in December last year. And Graviton 3 now is 25% more compute efficient than Graviton 2 processors, and these Graviton 3-based instances are 60% more energy efficient compared to other EC2 instances. So really exciting times in terms of compute, chipset, and our infrastructure that we continue to innovate on. Talking about customers themselves, ASEAN Money in Thailand is on a mission to actually go to unbanked segments of society and serve the underprivileged segments of society by giving them innovative financial solutions. So people who don't have bank accounts, don't have debit cards or credit cards. Now, they had big data solutions running on AWS Cloud. What ended up happening was, as soon as Graviton 2 chipsets were released, they immediately took the opportunity, worked with our team to actually migrate their workloads to Graviton 2-based instances. And as a result of that, they got 40% price to performance benefits, and they got 20% lower cost per instance type. And as a result of that optimization, what they saved, they could actually invest even more in that big data innovation space to actually accelerate their mission towards serving the underprivileged segments of society with innovative financial solutions. Now, this is the part of my job that really gets me excited. Because as the cloud evolves, new types of applications become possible seamlessly. About 4 or 5 years ago, customers going on containers or serverless stacks was considered to be an exception. Now it's fast becoming the norm. If you look at Bright Story in Indonesia, which is really a web and mobile portal for giving inspiration to brides for their wedding day. So by connecting to vendors, they could get hooked up on detailing like the catering, the venue, the transport, the decor, the wedding dresses, et cetera, all through online interactions. And they've become so popular now that their reach has extended beyond Indonesia, where there are customers in Singapore and Philippines, apart from Indonesia, who've also started using them. And they've reached very quickly 700,000 plus unique visitors in a month, every month, as a result of their popularity. While that sounds great, with scale comes challenges. They were on a partly monolith application running on the cloud, till their CTO instructed their team to actually break down those monolith applications into smaller parts. And so they used the AWS platform. They chose Docker containers as their platform of choice for containerization, and they chose Elastic Container Service on AWS to actually break down their monolith into smaller parts. The result is that their developers can now release new iterations and updates from once every 3 weeks before this change to once every single day or multiple times in a single day today. And the error rate, the failure rate, is less than 1%. It's also increased developer productivity, and the time to market has increased significantly, and they're faster now to time to market. Going from Indonesia to Philippines with Codex, in a developing economy like Philippines, there are constraints in infrastructure that could limit the access to international goods. And Codex was formed to exactly solve that problem, which is facilitate cross-border international shipment of goods and optimize the last mile delivery to the point where customers can get shipments at the lowest cost possible in the fastest time possible. They had started off initially on Microsoft Azure, but then they saw the AWS platform as more aligned to their vision and their workloads and their stack. And once they got started off, they actually converted part of the infrastructure into serverless. They used Amazon API Gateway, Amazon SNS, Amazon SQS, and AWS Lambda to build a serverless stack to actually result in their infrastructure costs going from $8,000 to $600. That's more than a 90% saving in costs, literally. And here's the thing, that was not just the main benefit that they got. They again had a lot of developer productivity that got baked in, a mobile-first culture that got set in their, inside their organization. The increased resiliency as a result of offloading the heavy, undifferentiated heavy lifting to AWS by using a serverless infrastructure, and apart from security and faster time to market. And so with all this happening on the cloud, right, let's actually hear from a customer itself. It is my pleasure to welcome the President and CEO of Mynt from Philippines, Martha Sazon, on stage. Over to you, Martha. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Martha Sazon. I'm the President and CEO of GCash, the #1 finance app in the Philippines. I'm here today to discuss the GCash story and how we partnered with AWS to create a positive impact on the lives of millions of Filipinos during this pandemic. The GCash app turns your mobile device into a virtual wallet and digitalizes payments, enables fund transfers, and provides access to lifestyle and financial services. We were able to earn the trust of millions of Filipinos with our digital ecosystem of relevant services, becoming the country's first duocorn. The GCash story begins with what we are trying to address. The pandemic had a massive impact on Filipino livelihood and the economy, leaving around 3.3 million Filipinos unemployed and the closure of 26% of businesses. Moreover, financial accessibility is still an issue as 63% of Filipinos still do not have bank accounts, and of the unbanked, 26% have no physical access to a bank. GCash aims to bridge these gaps by pursuing our vision of finance for all. As the pandemic sped up the adoption of digital services, it led to the boom of the internet economy. Anticipating the shift to online, we had to make sure that GCash was ready for the surge and prepared to be a lifeline to Filipinos and Filipino businesses. There were a few things to consider. First, scalability. how do we prepare for the massive surge of customers that we were expecting? Second, financial sustainability. Can we scale up while keeping our costs low? And third, innovation and empowerment. How can our platform support our goal of disrupting financial services in the Philippines through innovation and make sure that we have the right tech skill sets to do so? It was here that Amazon Web Services, AWS, proved to be most helpful. Since we were expecting a surge in users and transactions, it was important that we ensure our infrastructure supports our growth. We were able to do this with the help of AWS Autoscaling, as it made possible for us to scale on demand. Also, with Amazon Elastic Kubernetes Services, or EKS, and Amazon EC2 Spot instances, we were able to manage and deploy applications more efficiently. Our worries about costs were tempered because using AWS helped us optimize our cloud spending by leveraging the AWS well-architected framework. This wouldn't have been possible without enterprise-level support, help from AWS Solutions Architects, and AWS Professional Services. GCash saved approximately $3.8 million back in 2021. Our lowered costs steered us towards financial sustainability as we announced profitability in 2021, 3 years earlier than projected. We prefer working on AWS for innovation projects. Last year, GCash launched various game-changing product features, from our new BNPL product called GGives to an easy MSME solution in GCash Po. All of these were developed on AWS through collaboration with various AWS independent software vendor or ISV partners. We rely on their expertise to spur innovation and tighten our technical solutions to be more scalable, composable, and robust. We also used AWS to improve our internal processes through UiPath robotic process automation on Amazon Workspaces. We were able to swiftly automate our finance processes, enjoying around 85% improvement in processing time for financial recon, pre-funding, and settlement. This saved us around 2,600 man-hours per month by automating repetitive tasks which would otherwise have been done manually. It's amazing how we were able to innovate on AWS. On top of all these, AWS also helps us strengthen our tech practice by equipping the GCash technology team with the best training and exposure from AWS's education programs. Last year, we were able to certify 46 AWS practitioners and 40 AWS technical trainees. Through AWS, GCash is now the #1 finance app in the country based on third-party platform App Annie. 60 million Filipinos have now placed their trust in GCash, almost triple of where we were at the start of 2020. Last year, our system was able to process 3.8 trillion gross transaction value, again tripling the previous year. We were able to create a complete digital ecosystem to include a wider range of goods and services available to all our users. Beyond stats, what's more important is how we've made a positive impact on the community. Last year, a GCash user's post went viral. While on the beach, she wanted to buy seafood from a fisherman but realized she didn't have cash. Luckily, he accepted GCash. The fisherman was able to complete the sale because he had GCash. Another story that we are proud of is how we worked with various government units for a safer and more efficient distribution of pandemic relief support, disbursing over 16.3 billion worth of aid to 2.4 million Filipino beneficiaries in just a few days. But we know there's still so much to be done. We constantly innovate to give the unbanked access to financial services and uplift their lives. Through AWS, we empowered millions of Filipinos when the world closed down. We will continue working closely with AWS as the world opens up, and we continue to provide opportunities to make Filipinos' everyday lives better.
I love that story about that fisherman paying money through a GCash payment. Wonderful. Now, you might be wondering, we've looked at a case of Ascent Money using Graviton 2-based instances to move their workloads for their big data innovation. We looked at Codex transforming themselves through a serverless infrastructure. And then we had Brightstory converting a monolith into microservices, apart from Martha Sazon talking about their story of using services from AWS, including EC2 Spot and EKS, which is a Kubernetes service offering. Now, you might be wondering, what kind of use cases are possible on the cloud and what aren't? Is there a sweet spot? Are there certain use cases that cloud is more meant for, like containers and serverless? Well, what we have seen over the years is today, customers from every possible industry and every segment and of every size is running every imaginable use case on the cloud. Like, there's no limitations at all. So much so that we have on our public web page built an AWS solutions portal now, which you have access to, where if you are a customer from the financial services industry, a bank or fintech, or a media and entertainment company, or manufacturing, or retail, and beyond, we have a solution for you, which is an AWS solution which stitches together different AWS services and building blocks, ready for you to launch. And this is available publicly. And we obviously have sliced and diced it as per technology domains as well. If you want a solution in the analytics space, or IoT space, or machine learning, or compute and networking, chances are you will find that solution in our AWS solutions portal. And so the answer is no. There is no specific sweet spot for use cases on the cloud. While we have customers like Codex, Brightstory, big data innovation from Ascent Money, and Mynt running these modern stacks on us, we also have companies like Baba, which I spoke about at the very beginning of my presentation, that are running their services on us. Baba's has been in the business for 40 plus years, and they realized a few years ago that to truly scale and optimize, they have to start using the cloud for their technology processes and systems. And they chose SAP S/4HANA as part of their ERP systems and decided to run it on AWS cloud for cost efficiencies and for scale and flexibility. And fast forward today, their head of finance has said that it has become so efficient that their order processing time and their delivery times has been reduced by 50%. Yes, that's exactly half of what it was before they made this change. And so that was about Baba's. Now, for a long time, this notion around cloud, the public cloud, being a central resource where you have central infrastructure in form of regions and availability zones, and customers all around consuming those services was the case. What we are fast seeing a change from that aspect is this concept of cloud at the edge. If you look at one of Werner Vogel's blog around the future predictions that he made, future technology predictions, one of them was this concept of cloud everywhere, which is cloud will be so pervasive that cloud will be available in the edge in different shapes and forms. Talking about our global infrastructure, we continue to expand. We, as of today, have 26 regions across the globe, 84 availability zones, and 310 plus points of presence. All this infrastructure is interconnected with 100 gigabit connectivity, and redundant at that, so to ensure that our customers can scale globally using this global footprint. Now, in addition, what we did was we added this concept of local zones being a type of infrastructure which is very close to major population areas and major industrial areas, offering compute, storage, database, and other services from the AWS cloud. This is for customers who require really low single-digit millisecond latencies. We already had 17 local zones in the United States, and at re:Invent, we announced 32 additional local zones coming up across the world, including in ASEAN, where we have announced local zones coming up in Vietnam, Philippines, and Thailand. So apart from the regions that we have in Singapore and in Jakarta in Indonesia that we just launched last year, we have now local zones coming up in Vietnam, Thailand, and Philippines. And if you might be wondering, what kind of use cases will we start to see? Well, one such example is that of Netflix in the US, who leveraged local zones really well. Netflix obviously has been in the business for many years. They've been an AWS customer almost from day one. One of the issues they had was their rendering artists actually had to come to their studios to use petabytes and petabytes of media content and raw files to actually render stunning animations and visual effects. And the only problem was they had to come to Netflix studios mandatorily to do that. And with local zones coming in, Netflix has been able to give them flexibility to actually work not necessarily from Netflix studios, but from anywhere, because now they have local zones to connect to give them the very low single-digit millisecond latency that is required to create these animations using petabytes of content. Moving from local zones to the concept of outposts, while we released Outpost in GA about 2 years ago, and in ASEAN, we have a lot of customers starting to order and use Outpost. It's an entire rack of hardware, but it's just not an entire rack that is disconnected. It is literally the AWS cloud offering in compute, storage, database, and beyond that is brought to your on-premises, connected to an AWS region behind. It's the same experience in terms of the API calls, command line interfaces, or the console, and you can connect to it with extremely low millisecond latencies because it resides in your premise. NASDAQ, the stock exchange in the US, has used this to actually move some of the North America markets into the cloud. And this year, they're on their way to moving their options markets into the cloud, leveraging Outposts on-prem. Now, buoyed by that success of customers using Outpost in different ways, we then introduced Outpost 1U and 2U that could actually fit into things like shopping malls or retail stores or even restaurants. Right? So next time when you're in a restaurant in the future, you could be ordering a side of fries or something similar, but just know that there's a technology behind it that's playing to get you the order, and the compute infrastructure and the compute power behind that is happening on the cloud and potentially in that premise on a 1U or 2U Outpost server. Now, Outposts and local zones are only two of many kinds of offerings that are pushing the cloud to the edge. I haven't even spoken about things like the AWS Snowball family of devices, which can help customers move petabytes and petabytes of content to the cloud, or AWS Wavelength, which is embedding AWS compute and storage inside 5G networks. We see that this will very fast become the norm in the near future, with customers consuming the cloud at the edge everywhere. One of the aspects of AWS cloud at the edge, which is AWS IoT, which has been the norm for many years, as there have been several customers using us, is continuing to iterate as well. And we decided to actually take it further with AWS IoT TwinMaker. And with the TwinMaker, this concept of digital twin that was first came into being in the 1960s when the Apollo 13 space shuttle was in the space and they had a major oxygen capsule failure. There was a small explosion there. And that's where the scientists and engineers on the ground on Earth created an exact digital replica of that physical oxygen module and space shuttle to actually work out solutions in terms of how they would work out and get those astronauts back safely to planet Earth. That actually ended up being the premise for the astronauts to return safely. And so that's where the first initial beginnings of the concept of a digital twin was. Now, with IoT TwinMaker, you can actually create digital twins in real life of smart factories or even devices in smart homes. And the difference between the IoT TwinMaker digital twin and, let's say, other devices in the market like 3D modelings or CAD is the real-time streaming of the data points from sensors of those devices into IoT TwinMaker. So it's a real-time representation of the digital twin, not just a static offline representation. Now, to make it exciting, this is a live keynote, remember, we thought we'll show you a live demo. So let's switch to our screen where we are looking at a simulated factory line where, as you can see, we have actually simulated a simulated factory line, which is potentially a line full of cookie mixers per se, right? There's a dashboard, which is the IoT TwinMaker dashboard, where, as you can see, there are some alarms, etc., that can be that can come up if some certain thresholds are breached. And then each of those individual items that you're looking at are really individual mixes or cookie mixes. And if you actually zoom in there, you can actually see individual components as well. And so a lot of that is automated without nearly manual intervention required, simply because you have this common dashboard where the outputs are being aggregated automatically, right? Now, to take this even further, what we thought we'll do is come here, and let me keep my clicker here on the ground, and then what we have here is an actual Mixie, right? Literally, in studios, a Mixie. And what we thought we'll do is show you a live demo. And so let's try creating the initial ingredients of an actual chocolate cookie. What I have here is a Mixie. There are digital sensors connected here. These are real sensors, so one that measures the volume, one that measures the weight, one that measures the vibration of the mixer in the mixer bowl. And so these signals and outputs will hopefully go to the IoT Twin Maker, and you will start seeing some data points there. Now, in terms of the ingredient itself, I've got flour here, and I've got some chocolate crumbs or chocolate cookie crumbs here, chocolate chips rather. So what I'll first do is I'll initially put the flour. I'm opening the Mixie right here, pouring the flour. This is about 100 grams of flour that I believe here. So I've poured it here. There's a sensor that's reading it, and hopefully the sensor will actually show a step change in a while, which is of 100 grams in that. I'll close this Mixie, and it's ready to go. Once it's ready to go, we will just start the rotation, and the vibrations will increase. So let me just switch it on. There you go. Yep. As you can see, there's a sudden sub change given the vibrations have started. And then the volume and weight sensors should start showing up as well on the screen because they're sensing the increased volume in there. And now I'm going to put these chocolate, cookie crumbs, chocolate chip is in it. Another 25 grams of those inside it, and it will continue churning. As you can see, there's a step change coming in those graphs. That is not disconnected. That's actually taking data points from these sensors in the Mixie and going there. Finally, what I'll do is I'll increase the vibration higher, which means that the vibration graph should actually go further high up because the noise from the cookie mixer is actually being fed to IoT Twin Maker. And then finally, when I switch it off, as I can see on the screen, it suddenly dropped because the vibration has gone down to 0. As you can see, the volume and weight sensors are still there. The cookie and chocolate chips are still inside the bowl, which means the volume and weight are still showing where they are. And there's a bit of delay as well. And so that was just an example of what's even possible with creating a digital twin. Right? And imagine this to be extended to smart homes where most of your devices are connected to IoT Twin Maker, and then yourself or a vendor of yours could actually be streaming these on a dashboard and then be measuring things like remaining useful life and actually contacting you just before a breakdown might happen by predicting the breakdown by looking at the history of the operation and the different parts and what sensors they're seeing. Now, our innovative cloud really powers innovative customers apart from innovative use cases to the point where we have traditional bricks and mortars industry customers like telcos also inventing themselves on the AWS cloud. With that, it's my pleasure to welcome Nikhil Iyappan, the CEO of StarHub, on stage. Welcome, Nikhil.
Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here with my friends and partners at Amazon Web Services. So I want to talk today about StarHub, the StarHub of today, but also the StarHub of tomorrow. I'm going to talk about this in terms of our progress over the last year, our leading indicators, but also our go-forward strategy. The StarHub of today is not a telco. It is a digital ecosystem platform. With our consumer business, we are becoming a digital platform anchored in half of Singapore households. 2 million customers to whom we provide mobile, broadband, entertainment, and numerous digital products that are ever increasing. So we say we are moving from quad play to infinity play. Now with our enterprise business, again, we are much more than a telco. We are, with Ensign, the premier end-to-end cybersecurity provider in Singapore, serving government and large corporates. We also have a leading regional ICT business, which we acquired with Stratec and JOS. And we are, in StarHub, a leading provider of current, but also next generation connectivity. And we are bringing these three businesses together to build combined platforms around cyber plus cloud connectivity. Last, we work with a partner ecosystem with our own platforms, like Giga, MyRepublic Broadband, Ensign, Stratec, JOS, as well as with close partners like Amazon Web Services for cloud and software, Disney, English Premier League, and others for entertainment, and Palo Alto and Aruba for security and software. With DarePlus, we are on the way towards transforming from a telco to a connecting digital life platform. Our platform has 4 key elements, each of which is well underway. The first element is Infinity Play. Infinity Play means an infinite continuum of digital product delivered off our network to customers, our own as well as others, like cloud gaming. This means the product that we have today, all flavors of connectivity, mobile or broadband, cloud gaming, consumer cyber, 10 OTT streaming services, actually 11, including EPL, which we will be delivering for the first time in the world as an app-based streaming platform. Now, the second element of our transformation is our digital engagement. We are empowering our customers with the ability to serve themselves in a frictionless way on an app-based platform. We've already done this today with Giga, where the value is very clear: strong growth, highest NPS in the market, steadily improving in metrics. But starting from Q3 2022, we will be doing the same with more and more Infinity Play product available off our own super app platform. Now, the third element is our agile cloud SaaS IT stack. We are moving away from traditional cumbersome telco IT models to an agile stack of off-the-shelf SaaS tool, which we orchestrate and automate sitting on Amazon Web Services. Again, we will have this in place soon, Q3 2022, giving us a rapid and agile product cycle for Infinity Play. Now, the final and fourth element of all of this is our network. This is our differentiation. This is our moat for our platform with the fastest and best connectivity for our customers to Infinity Play. Embedded in the household, at home, on the move, anytime, anywhere, and on any device. All moving forward, improving, and expanding. So with all of this, we really become a digital platform play. Like other app-based platforms, Grab, Gojek, Uber, etc., driving more and more product off a digital engagement platform with a physical infrastructure as our differentiator, our network. So with DarePlus, the positioning of our enterprise business is also very different from a telco. We are harnessing growth tailwinds from strong ongoing growth in public cloud adoption, from the escalation and adoption of cybersecurity as a must for enterprises, and from the Singapore push here towards our smart city, Industry 4.0, and SG Green Plan objectives. We think the true value lies not necessarily in connectivity solutions, whether it's drones or automated factories or smart cities, but really in helping enterprises harness data from sensorized assets. We are uniquely positioned to do this with our regional ICT business, helping enterprises sensorize and harness data on the public cloud. Our enterprise telco business, pivoting towards ultra-low latency connectivity to the public, and Ensign, securing everything end-to-end. We are scaling each of these businesses and scaling them together, applying cloud, cyber, and cloud connectivity to high-value use cases around 5G IoT, broad-based automation across industrial, commercial, and residential environments, all with a green agenda and sustainability focus. Our DarePlus transformation and our innovation is all enabled by agile, cloud-based IT. We were already using the cloud for several years, mostly SaaS tools, but to achieve the full benefits of DarePlus, we decided to fundamentally change our approach and move to an agile, cloud-based IT stack versus a legacy telco-centric stack. Amazon Web Services is a big part of our journey to this full cloud-based IT stack for us to unlock benefits such as faster go-to-market, rapid development, multiple change cycles. Like many others at the start, we worked with Amazon Web Services to establish a secure landing zone. We used our own Amazon Web Services Direct Connect product to connect our network via an 80 gig secure, low latency connection with our Amazon Web Services landing zone. After testing with initial pilot workloads, we've now taken the next step, build to scale for our consumer and enterprise IT workloads. We've been on the second part of this journey for almost a year. While we haven't yet unlocked the full benefits, we were able to take multiple on-premise IT systems offline and move workloads onto the cloud. So looking forward, We intend to expand our relationship with Amazon Web Services to build a data lake with a 360-degree view of our customers. This data is for our own purposes, for recommendation, for upsell, for our clients, but we also make this data available to our business clients to use for their own benefits through a service we call SmartHub Analytics for Business. Now, our team is our foundation, and our team transformation is a foundation of DarePlus. We are moving to full agile and a mode of constant, thoughtful experimentation in line with our constant product evolution with Infinity Play. We are investing in enabling cloud skills, but we are also emphasizing behaviors, processes, mechanisms that drive innovation. Like Amazon, we believe in empowering our people, drive innovation while keeping the customer at heart. Since September of last year, we've been working with Amazon Web Services in different ways to empower and encourage our employees to experiment with new ideas. This includes sharing sessions between the Amazon Web Services and StarHub leadership teams around culture, process, people, now moving into how we reimagine our hiring and training. In addition, we have small teams experimenting together with different ways to drive innovation. We've done a series of workshops facilitated by Amazon on how to apply their working backwards process. It is through this combination, cloud-based systems, processes, people, culture, that we will deliver DarePlus. So our agenda for 2022, what is it? First, Infinity Play. This journey is well underway. 10 OTT streaming platforms, now 11 with EPL, cloud gaming, consumer cyber. Looking forward, for the rest of the year, you should expect more OTT, more gaming, more product, more verticals, and all of this imminently over Q2 and much more to come, almost every month. Number 2, we talked about super app and full self-serve digital engagement. We already have a world-class digital platform, Giga, which we are focused on growing even more. But also, as we spoke about, we are launching a super app on our new cloud IT stack to enable true self-serve across all of Infinity Play. You'll see this in Q3. Number 3, we talked about enterprise converged capabilities. We are the only player in Singapore or the region, in telco or outside telco, to have leadership businesses in each of cyber, cloud, and connectivity, the 3 Cs as we like to call it. So we are building digital platforms that bring all of this together, which we intend to scale both in Singapore and across the region. Now, of course, 5G is key to all of the above. We are focused on our network platform, a super fast network, a superior network, to give our customers access to rich digital experiences, transformational digital services, anytime, anywhere, in the home, out of the home, in the workplace. And of course, we intend to do all of this with efficiency, which we can, because everything that we are doing, from product to engagement to IT to systems, is focused on digital and cloud. So we will realize natural efficiencies and cost savings alongside and together with the growth that we drive. And then, last but not least, we've done M&A pretty well, and we will continue to do M&A as a cornerstone of our growth focus for consolidation in key segments, to grow footprint and scale, to grow capabilities, to drive our digital product and platforms across our base, and of course, to harvest efficiencies and synergies, and to realize value for all our stakeholders. Thank you very much for making time for me.
Now, Nikhil spoke about them, which is StarHub, being much beyond a telco. It was a way of digitally connecting people in their lives, right? And that has a lot of data, because modern apps generate massive amounts of data, whether it's from customers running e-commerce or social media or business applications internally or even otherwise, because it costs nothing to generate data today. IDC, in fact, estimates that there's going to be between 96 and 97 zettabytes of data created and copied and replicated in 2022 alone. Yes, that's 96 zettabyte plus. It's hard to imagine how much is 1 zettabyte. Forget 96 of them. And to just create a visual, just for fun, as to what 96 zettabytes of data would look like, if you were to imagine 1 terabyte hard drives, which these 96 zettabytes could be divided into, and you stack up all these 1 terabyte hard drives one on top of the other, it would actually be the Eiffel Tower multiplied by 18 million Eiffel Towers in total. Yes, it sounds crazy, but 1 terabyte hard drive stacked on top of each other, if you had 18 million Eiffel towers, that's what it would take to actually fit all these 96 gigabyte of data into hard drives. Now, talking about data, what we thought we'll do is we'll do another exciting demo here. And so what I have is my colleague Richard here, stage. Hi, Richard, how are you? Well, Richard has this drone in his hands. Wonder what we're going to do with it. This looks exciting, but it's also a live demo, so hopefully things work. So what we thought we will do is actually look at different ways where people are using data. And a simple use case, but fun, is using data from different shapes and forms, including from the human brain. Right? Now, what we are trying to do here is we have a small drone here, kept on this table here, and then Richard, who's wearing this special headset, which have sensors on them, is actually capturing brain signals and pulses and his brain wavelets, which based on that, and we've trained a model which we'll go through in a minute, based on the signals that we give Richard, the signals will actually trigger this drone to fly. Right? Just go up and fly a little. We are not controlling the drone, believe me. This is basically based on Richard's brain signals. And to make it even more engaging, remember this is a live keynote, so we wanted audience inputs. If you can zoom this slide on the screen for our audiences, this is a QR code that we have for you. So if you can scan it with your mobile phones, and then go to the web page, and then click on any one button, which are direction buttons. And the idea there is that, so I've gone to the web page here as well, myself, and then the idea being that depending on any web page that you click, right, I will get the output results here, and based on the output results, I will show it to Richard, and based on the processing of his brain, the drone will fly in that direction. And so we are asking you to poll and click on the different arrows. Everyone will click on different arrows, so we look at a majority direction that actually wins. I will pick up this in a minute, show you which direction, show it to Richard, and then hopefully the drone actually flies in that direction as advertised. Hopefully the demo gods are actually kind to us. Now, all of you are polling, let's shift to the other screen where we can show a quick screencast and a video of Richard and me when we were in our office initially, and then Richard at home training. What we did was we actually took wavelets from Richard's brains through the sensors, and we actually started training a model to actually categorize those signals into 4 different categories: up, down, left, right, like you saw on your web page and on this iPad screen. And the idea there was using a SageMaker training model, we could then categorize the different signals coming from Richard's brain wavelets into this different direction, so that when we actually have the output of your poll, we could then use them to actually have Richard fly the drone in that direction because the model has already been trained. And that's the power of machine learning. So let's quickly see. We're just hooking up our screen where we actually recorded this. Yep, there you go. That's up. So this was the initial screencast of Richard. This was at home. Nice. And so if you see behind, those are wavelets, but Richard's basically wearing this headset that he's wearing now. This was the initial setup that we tried on Friday. So there was a preparation done in order to make the drone fly. So that's the first one. And then can we switch to the next screencast, where we actually looked at the different categories of the signals coming up on the screen. Yep, he's trying hard to sort of control the wavelets there. And then the next one is really trying to train a cube, for example, as a part of the model training. And as you can see, the cube is actually zooming in and coming towards the screen. And that was Richard trying to bring and think the cube is coming forwards, right? Just like we do with the drone. And that is part of the training model. And then categorizing these different signals into 4 different categories was what we did in the backend with the SageMaker model training. Now, that's what we did in the backend. Let's actually go ahead and see what the poll results are, because that will actually ensure that it gives us a true result of what you guys poll for, and hopefully, all right. So looks like right side, which is your right? So from where you're screening and my left is where the drone will fly, is what you guys have asked for. Now, because these are reasoning, the brain wavelets can get confused, right? And so there has to be silence. So you will see a delay of a few seconds. That's intention. So what I'll show is, I'll show Richard quietly the arrow. I don't want to speak to him. So while I'm speaking, he can hear me, but then I'll maintain silence, because once he sees the right arrow, which is to your right, his brain signals will process them, and hopefully the model that we have trained in the background will work and then trigger the drone. Oh, there you go. Looks like it's working. And remember, we said right in this direction, and that's where the drone is moving. Hopefully it goes a little more. It's moved a little right. These things can work on and off, but it's moved towards this direction, which is what we asked it to do as per the signal that you saw on the iPad. There you go. All right, it's drifting a little away, but I think it's moved to that direction which we asked the drone to do, but it's going back to its base location now. All right, so looks like that went a little haywire towards the end, but it did actually move here before it actually went ahead. With the studio lighting in the floor, it probably got confused. But that was literally pulses, wavelets coming out of Richard's brain, trained via SageMaker model offline that helped us categorize those things. And then looking at that, Richard's brain looking at that actually instructed virtually the drone to move this side, and that's what it did, right? Now, why we showed you a demo, this is a fun demo, but in a real world, you could actually take this to anywhere, right? A ML practitioner or even someone with no ML experience could learn up SageMaker and then train models to do everything. Taking this use case into consideration, imagine the, solutions for autism in the future, where you have limited limb movements and you're training your brain signals to actually do things, or even other science experiments that could have real-life use cases. And looking at real-life use cases, looking at Formula One, I'm sure there are a lot of Formula One enthusiasts out there watching today's show. And AWS and Formula One have partnered to really make Formula One of the most data-driven and technology-driven sports in this planet. Each Formula One car has about 300 sensors. Together, they emit about 1.1 million data points. Yes, that's 1.1 million data points from each car per second going into the pit. Formula One got feedback from its audiences and its fans that they wanted more tight wheel-to-wheel racing. And in Formula One, given the speeds at which cars go, there's something called as downforce, which is a dirty air that flows in from back of the car and hits the car behind at extreme velocity. And what they did was they did modeling techniques like CFD, computational fluid dynamics, and others on the AWS cloud, so fast computing with millions and millions of data points, and they redesigned their cars in a way where the downforce going to the cars backwards that's trying to overtake reduced by a significant percentile. That ensured that more car races are now back-to-back and wheel-to-wheel tight racing as a result of these outputs. And so fascinating as to how big data analytics, especially in real time, with millions and millions of data points coming out of Formula One car sensors, can be used to make Formula One car racing even more exciting with tight wheel-to-wheel racing. And again, as I mentioned before, these are some of the use cases when we work with customers is what makes my job really, really exciting. Now, if you actually look at data, right, big data and analytics, there's 1.5 million customers and beyond on this planet that have used the AWS platform for their big data workloads. You see Globe there as well, which with their recent Customer 360 platform actually could onboard changing customer attributes 40x faster. But these are customers like Formula One and these 1.5 million customers that have used the AWS big data platform successfully. Having said that, an Accenture study shows that 68% of organizations are still unable to realize value from the data. They have the data is being generated, they're probably collecting it, but they're not really able to make data-driven insights from them. And the reason for that is that you actually need a proper strategy in your organization to become a data-driven organization. It doesn't happen overnight just like that. You need executive sponsorship from top down, your CXOs to developers. And you need a strategy that's flexible and scalable, but also job zero is secure. And apart from that, maintains governance, is highly available, and most importantly, cost-effective to actually make it tenable. And customers who have run successful big data strategies on us have told us that they have gone through this journey by actually separating the journey into 3 different parts: modernizing unifying, and innovating. Now, talking about modernization, a good place, and probably one of the best places to start, is looking at purpose-built databases on the AWS cloud. Remember the space shuttle story we spoke about, right? Don't let your past define the future. At Amazon.com, which is our online e-commerce parent company, we realized very, very early in the years that while traditional RDMS systems were purpose-built for a particular set of use cases, and they're still useful, but beyond a certain point, they don't scale. And that's when we invented DynamoDB, which is also a service offering that we give on the AWS platform as a part of NoSQL offering. You have Elastic Cache and MemoryDB for caching applications. You have Aurora, which is an open source-based cloud-native database to actually give you the scalability for your applications that are built for today and future and not past. Once you go through the modernization journey, because it's easy to go modernize these, things have become so popular that 500,000 plus databases have been actually migrated by customers to AWS using schema conversion tool that we provide and the AWS database migration service. And so once you modernize, you then move on to unifying your data. Because what you don't want is all these different data sets coming in from the edge to the internet, to even in a hybrid setup, coming in from your internal business applications on-prem, and so on and so forth. You don't want to create silos. And that's why you want to actually create a data lake. And data lakes are a really popular concept with customers to actually create a unified data source. So much so that 200,000 plus data lakes run on AWS as of today. And the reason running data lakes on AWS is popular is for a couple of reasons. One is our simple storage service offering, which is one of our first services that we ever released publicly when we started as a cloud computing platform back in 2006. S3 is really infinitely elastically scalable as an object store. As of today, it holds more than 200 trillion objects globally, and on an average, easily cross 100 million requests per second in terms of request counts. So it's really infinitely scalable, and it's a great place for almost all customers in AWS to start as a starting point for a data lake. But then customers gave us feedback that building a data lake, can take them a few weeks, especially when they're new to building data lakes. So we took that feedback and then released Lake Formation, which is a very easy way of actually collating your data from data sources like databases, object stores, getting them on S3, cleansing and categorizing the data using machine learning, and then creating a proper security and governance framework that is used in enterprises. This way, using Lake Formation, you can actually create a data lake within a matter of days and not even weeks, which is what is the reason for so many data lakes running on us, which is 200,000 plus. Moving on to innovating, customers tell us that if they do the first two parts well, which is modernizing and unifying the data, the third piece, which is innovating on top of it, becomes relatively easier. You still have to do a job, but it's relatively speaking, out of the three steps, the easier part. And the reason for that is there's an entire suite of services across the breadth of our big data offering. If you want to do analysis on unstructured data using open source frameworks like Hive, Presto, Spark, you can use Amazon EMR or Elastic MapReduce service, which actually supports those frameworks and more. If you want fast querying results on structured data in a data warehousing type setup, you can use Amazon Redshift. Real-time analytics, the types that Formula One uses, you can use Amazon Kinesis Streams and managed Kafka clusters. And then finally, you could have use cases where you have lots and lots of log files, right? Raw production log files from your systems, and you want to use them to troubleshoot your systems and your production systems, you can use the Amazon Open Search service for that. If you want to take it further down and use machine learning with your data, machine learning is becoming really accessible to customers because just like it was our original vision back in the days to democratize technology in general for our customers, which is why we started the AWS platform, we are continuing to democratize machine learning and give the power in the hands of every single developer. Customers told us in the past that, skills in machine learning and deep learning are hard to find. And so we took that feedback and we made it extremely easy for customers to learn up machine learning and make machine learning models on our platform without necessarily having a lot of machine learning experience. One example of that is Deep Racer. Deep Racer is this fun and engaging way of actually creating different models. So let's bring up a video of our Deep Racer deep racer racing.
Hi everyone, I'm Ryan Marine, and I'm excited to bring you the next evolution in racing, the world's first global autonomous racing league, AWS Deep Racer. Since launch, over 140,000 developers from more than 150 countries have participated. And this year, the Deep Racer League is more accessible than ever before. With the all-new Student League presented by Intel, high school and college students worldwide can compete for scholarships, prizes, and glory. Students can get rolling with just a few clicks, no credit card required. All new AWS Deep Racer arcades will let you skip the coding, grab the wheel, and race head-to-head against AI. Compete from anywhere in the world in monthly virtual circuit races. And the Summit Circuit is back in person on physical tracks across the globe with more chances to qualify for one of 50 coveted spots in the championships at reInvent. Discover how you can accelerate your machine learning journey at deepracerleague.com.
That was Deep Race, and I can tell you several customers across ASEAN here have actually used the miniature car to actually run physical races as a fun and engaging way for developers to learn up how to create machine learning models and use that for racing, or even virtually as well. And so really, really fun that customers have had, and they've given us feedback that as a result, the developers accelerated their learning on machine learning on AWS. Now, we do realize that different customers are at different journeys and at different stages with their skills. We sometimes do have expert ML practitioners who want to start building deep learning models, and they're required to work at the more complex layer of ML frameworks or infrastructure. So they want frameworks like MXNet or TensorFlow. We do realize that, and we do have that entire layer of ML infra and frameworks there as well. Whereas with some other customers, they want finished AI products and services, computer vision as a service, or a natural language processing as a service, building chatbots in a matter of hours, voice to text, text to speech, and so on and so forth. And for them, there's the AI services layer and then everything else in between as well. To give you customer examples, Techcombank chose AWS as a strategic cloud partner for migrating most of their on-prem workloads. And this was announced last year. Since then, Techcombank has been using massive amounts of workloads onto the AWS cloud. They're one of the leading banks for the last, they were formed about 28 plus years ago. They're one of the leading banks in Vietnam. And what they want to do as a part of their transformation is reinvent themselves by actually getting customer insights faster and then responding to them based on customer demands. And this is not just, when I say fast, it means almost real time. And so use real-time analytics to respond to customer insights and respond to them fast, which for a leading bank that is 28 plus years in Vietnam is really leading edge. Now moving to Philippines, with Ramcar, which runs KFC in the Philippines, they're using data-driven insights in interesting ways. They don't open up stores and plan for future stores to open up based on a hunch, right? Or just because it feels nice to open a store in a major population area. It's much more scientific approach than that, which is using data-driven insights from their workloads on AWS to actually predict where the next store should be opened for the optimal combination of where they might see maximum business, location, and so on and so forth. In addition, they've used machine learning in the form of Amazon Forecast to actually create a cooking schedule in their kitchens. And so in their stores, in the kitchen, they actually do menu forecast based on historical trends. What time will major customers walk in? What could be a popular menu item on a particular day of the week? And what kind of customers will actually eat it? And so next time you're in a KFC store in Philippines run by Ramcar, know that there's machine learning in play behind the scenes to bring you your food that you've ordered in the fastest amount of time, but with maximum freshness. And so cloud has really made everything into a commodity and a programmable resource. With the click of a mouse or an API call, you can really spawn an entire data centers or even individual building blocks like compute, storage, networks, databases, load balancers, and beyond. And as a result, we are seeing every imaginable use case in form of every single application or every type of application running on the AWS cloud. And every type of data is processed and copied and replicated and analyzed with machine learning done on top of it on the AWS cloud. And the concept of cloud everywhere, which is increasingly cloud going to the edge, is fast becoming the norm. Now, with all this happening, you might ask, what happens to all this compute power generating carbon footprint potentially, right? What happens to sustainability? We already spoke about the 451 research about AWS being more efficient than on-prem data centers. We introduced a new leadership principle of ours last year, which is success and scale bring broad responsibility. With 60 million EC2 instances being launched every day on an average last year, that's huge scale. And that definitely requires us to carry broad responsibilities. And the sustainability outputs that you see with renewable energy, our target of running 100% on renewable energy by 2025, doesn't come automatically. It doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of innovation that happens behind the scenes to make that happen. Now, we signed the Paris Climate Change Agreement in 2019. We're on track to be run 100% on renewable power by 2025 and be carbon neutral, net carbon neutral by 2040. This is not just AWS, but the whole of Amazon.com. And one among many, many things that we do is look at ways of optimizing the carbon emissions. One of them is data centers. We know that building data centers require concrete, right? Cement production is responsible for a lot of carbon dioxide emissions in the air. We discovered that clinker, which is a major component of cement or concrete, is actually made by grinding limestone and some other materials at high temperature. We found out through iron and steel waste byproducts, there are materials that can be cementitious, right? Give the similar properties without actually using the same amount of concrete, which means with the data centers that we've started building in the last 3 to 4 years have resulted in 20% lesser, 20% reduction in CO2 emissions in the environment. And so this, among many other innovations, are in play to actually ensure that Amazon is completely carbon net neutral by 2040 and run on 100% renewable energy by 2025. In fact, last year, we reached a milestone where Amazon became the largest corporate consumer and procurer of renewable energy. And in 2022 April, we extended that status further as well. That's it for me for now. We have a couple of minutes, so we thought, given this is a live keynote again, take audience interactions and take some questions. So I have my colleague here who's forwarded me some questions that have been put on the chat window. One question that's come in is, my organization is looking to go deeper into sustainability and green energy initiatives. If we run our workloads on AWS, how can we get more details on how energy efficient our specific setup on AWS is? What is our carbon footprint? Well, easy. A few months ago, we released something called as our customer carbon footprint tool, where you can actually go in and do some analysis on the online tool that we've given you. And based on that, depending on how optimally you're running, your carbon footprint calculations will be out there for you. In addition to that, as part of our well-architected framework, we have added a new pillar last year called as sustainability. And based on that, our solution architects can visit you and engage with you to ensure that we actually tweak your architecture and how you're deployed on AWS based on best practices to ensure that you are running in a much more sustainable manner. So if you're interested, go to our customer carbon footprint tool online, or even contact your account manager solutions architect, and we'll be more than happy to help you. There's another question is, how do we get extended help if we have to move our workloads to Graviton-based instances on AWS? So customers like Ascend Money engage with us. Some customers did it by themselves. HaloDoc is another example in Indonesia as well. Our solution architects and our technology specialists engage with customers on a daily basis. And if you're interested in actually moving your workloads that are on AWS to Graviton 2-based instances, we are more than happy to help you to dive deeper and help you with best practices. Let's see if there are more questions. There was another question on when will we have local zones in Philippines and Malaysia also. Well, as I already showed, that we have announced 3 local zones in ASEAN, including in Thailand, Vietnam, and Philippines. So that checkmarks Philippines as well. In the fullness of time, we will have global infrastructure, including regions and local zones and points of presence in every major country in the world. It's just a case of prioritization. Given in ASEAN, we have points of presence in all our 6 ASEAN countries. And we now have announced 3 local zones apart from our 2 regions. So it's just a matter of time in the future, based on customer feedback that we're always listening in, as to when we expand our infrastructure further. Well, that's all what we have time for. We are right on time there. Thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to you staying on for the rest of today, where we have 11 different breakout tracks and 100+ sessions across them, including localized tracks in Vietnamese, Bahasa, and Thai. Hope you enjoyed my session. Best of luck for the rest of the summit. Goodbye.